Okay then, so far we're passing in our modal content right here, the header and the text, using a prop, and we do that over here. Now this is great, and we can use props to pass all kinds of data into components, and we'll be using them a lot throughout this course, but sometimes we want to pass more complex information in terms of content into a component. For example, we have this modal which can be reused with different header messages and different text messages. But what if we had a form in one modal and we wanted some simple text like this in another? In that case, props don't really cut it. We can't pass a whole form as a prop into a component. So instead we can use something called slots. And slots are really useful for passing custom templates into components. They're not a replacement for props or an alternative really. They're specially designed to pass templates into components, which we don't do with props. And we would never use slots to pass data like a simple string or a boolean or an array into a component. We would use props to do that. So they're very different from props, and they focus on passing templates into reusable components. So let's see an example. So first of all, let's go to the modal, and no longer do I want to pass in the content, the header and the text as props. So let's delete them from there and also delete them from here. We can also delete them from where we register the props down here because we don't need them anymore, and save everything. So now what I'd like to do is pass in as a slot some content to this modal. Now to do that, we don't use a self-closing component like this. Instead, we need to open the tag, if you like, and also close the tag. And then inside here, we can just pass through a template like we would nest HTML elements inside other elements. If we have a div like this, we nest other elements inside. We do the same thing with our custom component. And the template that we pass inside here is known as a slot. It gets passed as a slot to the modal, and then we can use it. So let's just do a simple template first of all here, and I'm just going to paste this in. So we have an H1 and also a paragraph tag, and then if we go into the modal, we can use that slot over here, and the way we do that is by just saying slot like so, and then close off the slot. So now what will happen is whatever we pass in, whatever template we use inside the modal right here, it will put that where the slot is registered inside that component. So let me save that and preview. Let's open this. We don't see it. So let me just hard refresh to make sure all the changes have been caught and do this again. Now we do see it. Okay, cool. So that is how we pass through a simple slot, some template into a custom component, and then use that slot inside the component. So now hopefully you can see that if we were to use this modal somewhere else in a different component, we could just pass through a different template, and then that different template would be rendered where this slot tag is. Okay, so it makes it really reusable. Now, as well as just passing in a default slot like this, we can also pass in named slots. So say for example, I want to pass in something else into this component, but the component itself must have a very specific structure. For example, underneath this default slot, we might have a div right here, and the div might have a class equal to actions. And then inside this, we could have some kind of links. So I'd want to make it so that any links we pass in are placed inside here. Now, if I just pass them in normally, like this, anchor tag and then some link, they wouldn't go inside the actions div. They'd instead go right here. But if this has to have a very specific structure, like the links have to go inside the actions, we can use named slots. So we'd create a named slot over here by using a template tag. And this template tag could go wherever you want. It could go at the top up here, or it could go at the bottom down here. It really doesn't matter. Let's just create it at the top. So we create a template like that, and then close off the template. And inside the template, we could create whatever links we want to pass through. So let's do an anchor tag. I'm not bothered about the href for now. And the text is going to say sign up now. And then let's do another anchor tag. So A, and then the text can say more info. And then we need to give this a name, this template. So I'm going to say v-slot, and that is going to be links. So what I'm doing is using the slot directive to give this template a slot name, and I'm calling this slot links. So that's a very specific slot name. This is the default content for the default slot if it's not inside a template with this directive, and that always gets output right here. But when we use a named slot, that is not automatically going to get output right here, and I can demo that. Let me save this and then save this, and we won't see those links. If I open this up, in fact, I will hard refresh just to catch any changes, we don't see those links. So how then do we output a named slot? Well, we could come inside the actions, because this is where we want those links to go, and we could say we want a slot to go right here. Now, this would be another default slot. We want a specific named slot, so we'd use the name attribute and set that equal to whatever we call that slot over here. So it was called links. So we'd say the name of this is links, and it will look for any slot that's passed in which has a vslot directive name of links. So now if we save that, hopefully those links and that template should be output right here. So let's have a look, open the modal, and it's not there. If I refresh and then open the modal again, there they are. We can see those links now. So named slots are very useful when you have a certain structure inside your component. So you don't want the user to decide the structure of the whole HTML you're passing in. You just want them to be able to pass in certain content, and then you can take that content and output it in different areas inside the modal if you wish, or inside whatever component uses that slot. So that is how we pass through slots and named slots. Now, one more thing, we can pass in some default content inside here. So I could say default content, and this would only show if we don't pass a default slot in, so some default content right here. If I come over here, refresh and open the modal, that doesn't show that default content. But if I get rid of this, let me cut this and save it and come over here, and I'm going to refresh again and open the modal. We can see now this is the default content. This only shows if we don't pass in a default slot, but when we do, it doesn't show. So that's a nice kind of fallback right here. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is to be able to style up the links inside actions. So I'm just going to paste in a few styles down here. I'm going to do it above the sale stuff. I'm going to say modal actions, align them to the center, those links, give them some margin and a color of 333. In fact, we don't need this color because it's being used down here for the anchor tag itself. Bit of padding, a border radius, a text decoration of none, and a margin of 10 pixels. Now, I also want to style it slightly different if we have a sale theme. So let me again pass in these things down here. So modal sale actions, the color of the text is white and the color of the anchor tag is white as well. So let me save that and come over here. And if we refresh and then open the modal, we can see that looks a bit better. And if we don't use the sale theme over here, let me take that off. This thing right here, we can see they probably look quite nice as well. Open this up. Yep, they look pretty good. So there we go, my friends. That's how we use slots to pass in custom templates into our components.